How's it going, my fellow Titans? Welcome to a Titans recap, review, and breakdown. Now, this episode, I feel like it should have almost been called Barbara Gordon with the amount of flashbacks we got with her, to an extent of where I didn't actually think we would get flashbacks like that, and I will get to that. Obviously, we got introduced to Lady Vic this episode, and a whole bunch of other things that just really push forward Scarecrow, because he's literally out in Gotham now. We've got that ending, which is really a backdoor for Tim Drake to really come back into this season, and that's really going to propel him into the future episodes, I'm sure. And here's another aspect: you're all up to date with me now. I've only seen up to episode 6 with all of those episodes that I got to see early, so from here on out, guys, like, I have no idea what is happening in the next episode, so maybe these videos will have a little bit more speculation, considering beforehand I couldn't do that when I knew what was going to happen. But let's start right at the beginning with that Lady Vic intro, because this was, I guess, a little sit-up to her character in this iteration. If I remember correctly, Lady Vic's quite a mercenary, and they've definitely brought all of those assassin mercenary vibes to her, but they've added in this kind of romantic kind of revenge she wants to get for what happened, as you all know, since you've seen the episode, with Dick Grayson, Barbara, and her boyfriend or husband at the time, who died. She is out for revenge, and I have a little bit of an issue with this, and I'll get to it a little bit later. Like, there's so many things I love about this episode. I just feel like there's a couple of things that were a bit of an oversight, and it's more in the writing. It just doesn't make so much sense, but trust me, we'll get to that when we get to that. But overall, I thought it was a good introduction to the character. One thing I was trying to tease you guys about beforehand with this episode is the amount of Blackfire scenes we got, which I found absolutely hilarious. So in this next scene, it picks up in Wayne Manor with Blackfire entering, and as I said, it's just her holier-than-thou attitude that really kills me. My personal favorite scene, mixed with another scene, I suppose, of Superboy later, but it's just this one where she's like, I see you've prepared a welcome gift. Have him washed immediately and have him returned to my chamber. So Blackfire has kind of got the hots for Superboy, and she assumes that he's a servant, a manservant who's gonna fulfill her needs. And I love how she assumed that the little green one, is he not yours, Corey? But this, guys, is when the 6-year flashbacks start, and I really like, I mean, I know we're into Nightwing mode, but personally, I really like the fact that we still get to see Brenton Thwaites in his Robin suit. Even as a prime Robin, because this is 6 years ago, so this is really when Batman and Robin were really doing their thing. And we see Robin scoping out a theft situation going down in Gotham City, you see the bat signal is lit up, and we see a very Catwoman type lady come down on a wire, using even this high-tech laser to steal this vase, and we get this little dance of a fight, and I really like the combat. Like, I love the quick kind of combat that Titans has adapted. Now, this is revealed to be Savannah Welsh's Barbara Gordon. That really blew my mind. Now, maybe some of you caught that earlier, but I think the reason why I didn't recognize who was under the mask and the goggles and stuff is because I never expected this, because lots of people were wondering, will we get Batgirl flashbacks? Now, this was not Batgirl flashbacks, but it may as well have been. Some of you may be thinking, well, if they're having Barbara Gordon literally do hand-to-hand combat, and she seems very proficient in doing so, why didn't they just make her Batgirl? Well, that is seriously just a limitation of the show. Similar thing to Batman himself. You can use Bruce Wayne, you can use Barbara Gordon, but you can't use the cowled version of them, and if you do, they might give you a little bit of leeway, like in season 1 where you saw a stunt cowl of Batman and stuff, but that's the limit of it. Now, as for Batgirl, she's having her own show on HBO Max, so that's why they couldn't do the flashback to when Barbara is still doing hand-to-hand combat, but it may as well put her in Batgirl mode, right? But they can't even do that because, well, of what I just said. So understanding that going in with this context, I was still very pleasantly surprised seeing this, like a 6-year-old youthful Barbara, youthful Grayson, who's like a bit, it's kind of like the teen spirit of it all. And yeah, I just thought that the chemistry between them both was great. Obviously, we knew that they'd be rekindling their romance this season in present day, apparently, but that news came out way before the season even released, so it's nice to see the romance actual part of the past that is to be rekindled in present day, which we kind of did get a little bit of a teaser for towards the end of this episode, but it kind of held off, and we'll get to that when we get to that. I'm guessing that she's quite proficient with combat in this iteration because, you know, she's Jim Gordon's daughter, so I think she would have had quite a bit of self-defense training, but this is even before she even goes into Bruce's life, before Bruce even trains her. So imagine what she's like as Batgirl sometime in the future, because don't forget, right now, where we are at in these flashbacks, we know that from this moment, she eventually does get training from Batman, becomes Batgirl, the Killing Joke happens within all of these 6 years, and then she is paralyzed and she becomes Commissioner Barbara Gordon at the GCPD. And I feel like they did a good job at still being the same character, but a slightly more immature, youthful version compared to the Commissioner Babs that we have now and Nightwing Dick Grayson in the future. Talking about that immaturity, if you will, I feel like some people might get rubbed up the wrong way with this. Now, Barbara does say that what she's doing is, you know, the security here is a joke. It's a way of keeping her dad on his toes, which is, you know, like I can understand that. But I feel like what we get into with the flashbacks, I don't think people will necessarily enjoy seeing Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon, and Dick's currently Robin, going around Gotham, robbing, literally thieving jewelry, when Batman and Robin have kind of put away people like Magpie before for doing that exact same thing. I mean, the way I look at it is like, this is like, as I kind of said, it smells like a little bit of teen spirit, if you know what I mean. And, you know, Batman and Robin, they do fight crime. Technically, Magpie would be doing stuff like this, but I don't know why. I like to think that this is me trying to be unbiased. I don't mind Robin having a little bit of a romantic kind of fling with Barbara, and where they're stealing things, because it's not like they're killing anyone, and there is a little bit of a reason behind it, keeping my dad on the toes. And it does feel like a youthful Bat family character-like thing to do between a couple of them that might make Batman and Bruce Wayne, well, it would if he found out, very much so roll his eyes. But I would love to know your perspective on that. For me, it does kind of fit the characters. It did make me think twice a little bit. It was like, damn, Robin, you're kind of thieving, but like they know they're doing wrong, but it's a little bit of angsty fun. I will leave this one to you. This is when they catch a drink in the bar and they start talking about, you know, what Dick says, what's with all this Selena Kyle shit. Obviously references left, right, and center, because Barbara was very much so doing Selena Kyle shit. And when she says, you know, when you look at me, I'm the commissioner's daughter, like perfect grades, this, that, and the other, like she wants to do something that matters. Now, what I also loved in this moment is Dick is like, well, why don't you, you know, come out with me and Bruce? Why don't you join us? You're already halfway there. He could teach you. And she's just like, Batman, Robin, and Dick comes up with the idea of Robin Girl, and she's just like, how about Batgirl? And he prefers Robin Girl. But obviously I love hearing the fact that they put Batgirl in there, because sometime after this, you can assume it might even be a matter of months until she probably does choose to take the couch. So even though she said she wasn't game for it right now, she said it's not really her thing, you guys work for my dad, you follow the rules, she does eventually obviously become Batgirl. The Killing Joke happens, and so the almost near Batgirl and Robin go out and steal even more things, and that's when Dick ties up her necklace and they kiss. So I'm sure many Barbara and Dick Grayson stans are loving this, whereas maybe certain other stans are probably hating this. I don't know, but either way, it's in the past, so if you're a Dickory stan, there was also Dickory moments in this episode, and we're gonna get to that, kind of. It still remains to be seen if they are gonna have a thing in present day, but it could be the case, especially with the low-key foreshadowing they had at the end of this episode, but I'm still holding my breath. Personally, I kind of like Dick and Barbara, but, you know, I'm gonna leave that to the comment section. Don't hate me. This little flashback got interrupted because, you know, it kind of springs into present day. And don't forget that this is because last week's episode was an entire flashback episode. So really, this is picking up from episode 4 at the end, when Nightwing literally got clipped by the sniper bullet and he's in a little bit of trouble. Nothing too serious, but the fact remains, as Corey says, 5 inches over and we'll be burying another body. So this is when we have Gar and Corey patching him up. And this is a very interesting scene because there's a few takeaways from it, in that I personally like how Grayson here is being held accountable, because here, with what his actions were in episode 4, he's meant to have stepped into his confidence as a leader this season, as Brenton Thwaites has said himself, and I think they really have shown that in those first few episodes. However, he almost backtracked a little bit by going out by himself, and as they're staying here, he could have literally died, and he just says he didn't want to put the others at risk, but it's like, Dick, you're a Titans team, and that's the way you're meant to be operating now. I suppose his plan was sound in his head, but to me, I can't deny that it does feel like a teeny bit of a regression. Maybe the reason they did this is deliberate character regression, because they wanted Gar to go off on him with how he says that you scared us. Going out on your own, getting shot, it's not okay. Hank blew up. Dawn left us forever. Jason went dark. This family is dying, and you go out alone and get yourself shot. Thank you, Gar. He's pointing out something I feel like the fans would be typing in the comments if they didn't include this scene in. And also, thank God that when Gar was kind of hulking out into Beast Boy mode because of his anger, that the CGI was clean there. Compared to that time when he showed Superboy that same face, that was diabolical bad CGI in season 2 in that moment that I'm probably showing you on screen. I'm just trying to acknowledge this, that they have noticed that and they're not pulling out that same Play-Doh-like face compared to when he was hulking out here. It's much more improved. So my takeaway from that is Dick did have like almost a character regression, but the reason why I can almost let it slide, as long as he doesn't have another one, because then it will just feel like, but you're supposed to be the leader, you know, operating as a Titans team. That doesn't change just because you've gone from San Fran to Gotham, is that it was quite personal. The whole thing last episode with Scarecrow and Jason, I can understand how even he, in that situation, after learning about how Jason told Scarecrow about Batman and everything, maybe he kind of jumped the gun and just wanted to get to it. But if he does that again this season, then that would be, I think, quite a mistake in the writing. But I've got a feeling that they just won't do that because, well, you can't have the Nightwing, the new leader in season 3, constantly going back and doing impulsive things because he's meant to have learned from that. But guys, this is one of my favorite aspects of where we're at in the story now with Titans. Even though this episode felt like a kind of slow burner compared to what we've been used to in the first 4 episodes, or 5 even though 5 was quite a context and flashback episode. Here, we actually see Jonathan Crane, the Scarecrow, out in Gotham, and this is mad. So we see him talking and walking with Jason and how they're manufacturing a drug that Jason has been taking to like properly reproduce it to distribute it out to possibly all of Gotham. I still love the fact that Scarecrow, my main takeaway, is that he's out in Gotham now and he's manufacturing his own new little plan of drugs, and it's just like the city is his for the taking because there's no Joker, there's no Batman. I mean, sure, there's other probably villains out there, but it seems to be his opportunity for the taking. And I love, you know, I'm quite on board with Vincent Kartheiser's Scarecrow from what we've seen so far. I know not everyone is, you know, subjectivity and all that, but I love it, and I love seeing him have his run of the city. And not only that, the power dynamic between Red Hood and Scarecrow. That is another very entertaining thing to watch go down, because Jason really has the wrong end of the stick in this situation, because there's a bit of a disagreement and there's a greater plan at work, my Padawan learner. Mysteries yet to be revealed. I love how Vincent Kartheiser kind of plays it in a way where you can tell he's really frustrated with this little freaking kid, but he doesn't let that show. He still tries to play Jason in this moment where, you know, I get you. You're excited to see what the next step is. But before that, you need to come with me. And yeah, that's where he shows his power. And that whole scene, basically, if you want to translate it out into an equal sign, is showing Red Hood his goddamn motherfrickin' place. Like, there's no other way to put it, because here we see a bunch of doctors or surgeons in that room. Scarecrow says, you know, there's been a shift in dynamics, and, you know, I blame myself for not being more transparent, and Jason's like, about what? Like, it's all completely flying over his head at this minute, and that is where he says Exhibit B, or as a lesser man may say, number 2, and I absolutely love those digs, because I still don't think Jason realizes that he's taking the piss out of him in that moment through referencing what he said earlier. He's completely undermining Jason without Jason even realizing it, and that is when we have Lady Vic come in, completely slaughter everyone, and Jason couldn't look like he shat himself anymore in that moment. I know he lashes out later, but he is so put in this place in this moment, his face looks like a slapped ass. And I love that, I really do, because it elevates, don't get me wrong, I don't want Red Hood to be completely belittled as a little punk kind of thing, and I'm glad they didn't really do that, because he does come back later and tries to take control, but what it does do is elevate the character up of Scarecrow to where he's not like an intimidating, overcomposed kind of villain like Red Hood or another villain in Gotham. He's a guy who looks like you could just stab him kind of thing, but no, he's so much more than that. He's the Scarecrow, and through that intellect, you can see that coming out in scenes like this. This is when we get another Blackfire and Starfire scene that just cracked me up, just because, you know, we saw Starfire washing the dishes, and she's just so confused. She's like, this is a disgrace. We are queens. And just, I don't know, something about the queen line there just kind of rang true to the meme, but it was delivered very seriously. But they are queens. Don't call me a simp. But this is another funny thing, and just a very, very small crumb for the Dickory fans. And I don't know if this will make them really happy or kind of annoyed that they're only getting this much, because I'm sure they want a lot more, but at least there's some acknowledgement here, because the takeaway from this is Blackfire was observing Dick and Corey the whole time. Like, their mannerisms, how they're around each other and stuff, when he was saying, you know, there's been an attack at the Thomas and Martha Wayne Memorial Hospital, and that's when she's like, I understand now. The tiny green one isn't your manservant. Clearly, he satisfies your urges. But what I love about that is not only was that line funny, is that Corey doesn't answer. So she basically admits that Grayson most certainly does, and he most certainly did in season 1. If we all remember that episode. At this point in the episode, Dick and Corey go to the hospital where they learn that the medical piece of equipment that went missing is a shortwave positron multiplier. Goes to the GCPD. There's a little bit of an awkward interaction considering that Barbara was the one who gave the go-ahead for that sniper shot. They both agree that they need to start working together. Barbara reveals that they only recovered audio from the surveillance feed, so that would be useless, but we learn later on that it actually isn't. But the biggest takeaway from this particular scene is the reference to Oracle. Now, I love the way they kind of make Oracle sound in this iteration, because initially Dick's just like, look, this is Red Hood and Scarecrow. We can use Oracle's voice recognition to tap into Gotham's phone network. But Barbara comes back and says, look, just no. Oracle has been mothballed for a reason. I'm the only one with access, and I'm not revisiting that monster. Not for you, not ever. So, this really does make me think that in this iteration, Barbara's kind of Oracle persona is more that she probably developed something that is Oracle, an AI or something, in a similar fashion to the overpowered technology in The Dark Knight that Bruce very temporarily used, that kind of, was it called sonar or something, to locate, but it's so powerful that it shouldn't be in anyone's hands kind of thing. And those are the vibes I'm getting from Oracle, with how maybe she did design a similar thing to that, and it's kind of this surveillance system that if in someone's hands, it's just, yeah, nobody should have that kind of access to probably almost anything, because that's what I'm willing to bet. Oracle in this Titans iteration can probably find anyone, anything, anywhere, anyhow, anywho, any whatever. It's interesting to think what actually happened, though, for her to call it a monster. Clearly, it is still there on standby just in case they ever do need to pull it out, which kind of does tell me that at some point in the season, surely she will, because I don't know if you would drop that in, maybe other than just a bit of a fan service Easter egg. But I don't know, I feel like this is foreshadowing that they will pull it out. But what went wrong in the past? Did Barbara maybe develop it to try and track down the Joker, and Bruce then apprehended him, but maybe something went awry with Oracle? I don't know, like, the speculation can go down any road there, but the fact is she views Oracle as a monster. Now, next up, we get another portion of Blackfire scenes and Corey scenes with Superboy. And so we have Superboy, Corey, and Blackfire rock up to the location of the inventor of the medical device that was stolen by Crane. And I don't know if the inventor, because I think Corey referenced, oh, it's the inventor, and it probably is literally meant to just mean she invented it, but I don't know if it was a reference to the inventor, villain from DC Comics, but hey, I don't know. Corey initially goes in by herself after putting Blackfire in her place once again. A little part of me does feel bad for Blackfire, but there still is a lot of context that we still need to see, because on the surface level details, Blackfire has done some very bad things, but the way that Corey keeps treating her in these present day scenes, even though we haven't seen the flashbacks that I'm guessing that we're getting, I just feel bad for her, because she is trying to help out at the minute, but yeah, she keeps getting shat upon. But understandably, from Corey's perspective, for very good reasons, because she doesn't feel like she can trust her. But this led to a fantastic scene with Superboy and Blackfire in the car, because I just really like the scene in general, because the way I viewed it is that it just feels like it's the perfect pairing, since they're both aliens, they're both somewhat new to this world, because we literally have Superboy as a test tube baby who's learning things really fast and new for the first time, but it was only last season when he came fresh out the test tube, so to speak. And as Blackfire, well, shares that naivety to Earth, and is also awkward around earthly things, so they can just kind of relate in that way. It gets into them both talking about Tamaran, it's not like Earth, but then she asks him, have you ever heard any stories of Krypton? And he's like, well, how did you know? And she could tell that he has the blood of and the strength of Krypton running through his veins, but also something else, and we all know that is Lex Luthor. But through the Lex Luthor reveal to Blackfire, well, that meant that she could relate even further, because she says that she has an empathy for that struggle with being neither here nor there, because she she was an alien even on her own home planet, and all she ever wanted was the power that Coriander wielded, and that was the fire. Every royal is born with it except Blackfire, and she views herself as the cursed child. And as a result of that, she was treated as less than a worm. All she seeks is acceptance, and I think that's kind of what she wants now. And I feel like in a predictable way, they are very much so going to reconcile this season, and I feel like when they do that, oh man, a Blackfire and Starfire pairing, imagining both of them two on the same team, that's going to be badass. I actually genuinely can't wait for that, because we know we're getting Blackfire with the Titans this season in her badass armor. And so far, I think that Damaris Lewis is doing a fantastic job. I both like her character, I both find her funny, but also they're adding that deeper layer to her that's making me care about the character. This is when Superboy had to rush in, and there was the same bomb that blew Hank up on this woman, poor woman, but this time, obviously, because he's built the deactivator before, he could get it to that 0 level error rate or whatever it was, so it would be compatible with deactivating the device and not blowing her up, which was a good moment for Superboy because, yeah, could you imagine how he would feel if another person blew up? After saving this woman, they learned a lot more about the machine, which is another thing I liked about how they utilized Superboy's character, because Corey asked, well, if only we had a criminal mastermind who could tell us about, you know, what Crane could be doing with this machine. And that obviously appeals to Superboy because he is one half Lex Luthor. He literally shares the same brain chemistry and DNA as this man. So he kind of thinks, well, if I was an evil genius, then I guess I could alter the machine to multiply other chemicals. Whatever I wanted more of, I could have and fast. So obviously Crane is really trying to expedite the process of making the anti-fear toxin so we can properly roll it out to all of Gotham. But when they get back, Blackfire isn't in the car, but that is probably down to her, obviously, not only wanting to help, but as Superboy said, you kind of need to earn your way into this family, so that's probably her trying to also go out and prove that she can be useful and thus seek that acceptance. But that also led with Corey later coming in and just shouting at her once again. I understand where Corey's coming from, but I feel bad for Blackfire because she was genuinely helpful. Now, the next scene between Dick and Gar, when Dick's going through the vents at the GCPD, and we have Gar talking from the Batcave, I feel like it was a very transparent kind of debate that is also going on with fans right now in terms of how and can Jason ever be redeemed, because we have Gar saying, I have to believe that this dude we fought alongside, my friend, that he's not all bad. What if this is not his fault? And it's kind of like, well, yeah, Crane is manipulating him, but Jason quite literally has done some things as well. But it's interesting to read some of your comments as well, because I think a lot of us are seeing this from various different perspectives. I personally think that there is redemption from Jason in the long run. I think there's a lot of stuff stacked on this character, and this could be a whole other video, so I don't want to get too deep into it right now, but I think when you're taking a literal drug that can change your brain chemistry and make you not feel any remorse or fear, because it's not just fear, I think fear being eliminated is a big blanket statement for this drug. It also takes a lot of other things like remorse, empathy, anything. So you don't really feel anything, and if anything, it probably capitalizes upon your frustrations. And that for Jason is Dick Grayson and various other things. So I'm not saying he should be completely forgiven for killing Hank or something, because that is really dark, but he has had his strings pulled by Scarecrow. He's been literally brought back by the Lazarus Pit, which has been known to make you a little bit different in of itself, but he is also taking a drug that can really change him. And I don't think that completely fixes everything, but there are even more nuanced details that I'm not getting into right now with the context that episode 5 offered, which kind of adds these little subliminal frustrations and insecurities of all kinds of things for Jason Todd to kind of just implode. I'm not saying it's perfectly done or that it is perfectly excusable, but it's an interesting debate that they've put in the show that is also going on with the fans at the same time as these episodes are coming out, and I just find that fascinating. But up next, talking about Red Hood, we literally have Jason who can't take being put down like that by Scarecrow, so he comes into where they're manufacturing the drug, guns blazing. He's like, I want a drug. The guy's like, we're not finished here yet, but I thought Crane was in charge, and that just triggers Jason even more, understandably, because when they're saying they're taking orders from Crane, we thought he was the boss. He's just like, who's the boss again? I thought so. And yeah, Jason is just honestly on a downward spiral. And now what happens after this scene, as we know, happens at the very end, and we'll get to that because it's very messed up. But up next is quite a comic booky scene from Dick Grayson. Now, I found this really, really cool, but I also found it quite far-fetched, yet at the same time, the way I'm okay with how far-fetched it is because, you know, when it comes to a comic book show, when you compare this to the comic book panels, this would literally be easily digested in a Batman comic with what Grayson and Gar go ahead and do, and that is through listening to the audio recording of Lady Vic killing the surgeons. He says that him and Bruce used to do this together as a part of his training, and that's basically to help figure out who this person is just through meditating and honing in on the noise that was, you know, happening in the recording. And it also kind of helps you figure out how through being with Bruce as Robin, he became such a great detective. But the details that are obviously quite far-fetched is that through that, he can literally find out that the killer was 12 feet northeast of the victim, and then there was a slice on the back rather than anywhere else, like on the frickin' toe or the finger or something. Like, what? How does he know it's on the specific area of the back? But as I said, far-fetched, but yet if you read this in a comic book, I don't think many people would be that nitpicky about how it's unreal. It's a, you know, in the comic books, people would just accept that and think, oh, it's a very Batman and, you know, Dick Grayson Nightwing thing to do. I also do want to note that in this particular scene, and this has been seen in other episodes prior to this, but I felt like it was most obvious here, in how that this set is the most notably reused set from the Titans Tower. I mean, you can tell that this is where they trained during season 2 in those Titan Tower scenes where Raven was like, I don't know, killing Jason at that one point. You can really easily tell that even though this is meant to be the Batcave, that this is one of those little kind of training dojo-y areas that they had either side of the little hallway. Since in this moment, Dick realizes who the killer is after listening to the recordings, this springboards them into yet another flashback where we see Barbara and Dick go to another robbery whilst being very kissy-wissy in the meantime, literally in the middle of the robbery. Dick says that he thinks that they make sense, so it's like at this point he was kind of seeking to get into a relationship with her, but we still quite don't know what happened as to with Dick ruining everything, because Barbara's definitely given strong clues as to how he couldn't be trusted in the past. So they proceed with the robbery, but that is when they run into two other individuals, Lady Vic and her boyfriend, and yeah, this is the moment I have a little bit of an issue with. So I love the combat, it was all awesome, seeing Barbara basically in Batgirl action. It got up to the point of where Lady Vic is about to throw a blade into Dick Grayson and kill him, but she is thrown off when Barbara rushes into her. Thus, Lady Vic ends up throwing a knife into her lover, and he dies. But the thing is that kind of bothers me, and I don't get why they did this, because it's quite a bit of an oversight, and unless I'm being really stupid, and I'll hold my hands up if I'm wrong, like seriously, I could be completely overlooking something, but I've watched it through a couple of times now. I just don't get how Lady Vic knows who to go after in present day, because there is literally no way that she would know the identities of Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson, or even let's just say it's Barbara she needs to go after. How did she know how to go after in present day? Because in the flashback scenes, Barbara's identity was completely intact. So how did she know to go after Barbara in the Crime Alley scene and everything like that if she never found out who she was? This could have been easily fixed just through at that fight scene where Dick and Barbara were just looking at what happened. If her like face covering was down, and then, you know, let's say Lady Vic got a very good look at her and she's been searching for her ever since. But to my knowledge, watch the episode again, there is not one moment with how Lady Vic could know the identity of those two people, which we know as Dick and Barbara, robbing throughout Gotham City. To her, it was just some random person who got away with their identity hidden. Now, you could say with everything that Scarecrow now knows about the Bat family, Batman himself there, he could have told Lady Vic, but it still makes no sense. It still makes no sense, because he wouldn't know anything about the two random and identity-concealed thieves 6 years ago. Like, he has no idea about any of that. He just knows about Batman and the Bat family stuff. So he has no idea that Dick Grayson and Barbara went round stealing things 6 years ago. So yet again, I ask, how does Lady Vic know who to go after for revenge? This is when we get that scene in the GCPD where Barbara gets a little alert. It must be an alert when only Batman is contacting her, because it unlocks a secret compartment in her desk, which is a little phone that I'm guessing Bruce just gave to her in times of need for when they needed to talk Batman to Commissioner, which is something I really dig. Dig, because it's probably a similar desk or the same desk or even the same phone that her father had to contact Batman. But we hear Ian Glenn's voice saying, "Barbara, it's me. I'll be where it all started. Come quickly. And Barbara, don't tell Dick." Now Dick, at the same time, after learning who the killer of those surgeons were in the hospital, realizing that it's Lady Vic, thinks, "I need to call Barbara," but she's not picking up because she's headed to Crime Alley after hearing Bruce. And so Barbara arrives in Crime Alley, and I thought this was a really cool scene because it gave a really good demonstration of how Barbara is still a mother frickin' badass, even if she's confined to a chair and fighting somebody who is completely going ham at her and doing all of these various different things. It shows how proficient she is as Batgirl, and she even has these little frickin' Eskrima sticks of her own, and I love the little yellow highlights also kind of highlighting the theme of her Batgirl armor. You have to think that the yellow's just added in there for little teasers like that. But yeah, lo and behold, Lady Vic was just lowering her there. Now, I do have... It's not so much an issue, I just don't know how I feel about this. This is one thing that is dodgy with Scarecrow knowing everything about Batman, who Robin is, who Jason is, who Dick Grayson. He knows everything. In that, through giving Lady Vic this audio recording of Bruce Wayne, well then surely she is in on the loop as to who everyone is in the Bat family, who Bruce Wayne is, and how he's Batman. And I just don't know how comfortable I feel about, I don't know, just like the fact that I don't mind Scarecrow knowing. Long story short is because I feel like if you have a rogues gallery villain in a show like this who knows something like that, like literally everything, then I think it's kind of, I could be completely wrong with this, but a way to sort that out at the end of his arc of this season is to kind of kill him off, and then that way the secret dies with him. But now if it's getting out to various other people, it's a bit sketchy. I do like how Lady Vic says the Joker should have put you out of your misery. Now all of these lines are fine because in this present day, it makes sense for Scarecrow to be like, "Oh yeah, Commissioner Barbara Gordon, by the way, is Batgirl," because he knows all of these details. But that still doesn't mean that she would put the dots together that also Barbara Gordon was the person who was completely disguised when her husband died. That she just wouldn't make those correlations because it could have been any two random people in the whole of the city. So that's still something that I just didn't understand how they could overlook that, because it could have, as I said, been really easily fixed. Eventually, Dick catches up with Barbara in Crime Alley. He even says 6 years Lady Vic leaves you alone, and now all of a sudden she wants a pound of flesh. Once again, doesn't make sense to me. We then get a scene where Dick and Barbara almost literally did rekindle their romance, but not just quite yet, because he was checking out her apartment to see if Lady Vic was still there. And back at Wayne Manor, we have that scene of what I briefly went over earlier with Blackfire already there, but the information I didn't talk about earlier with how she said that she found out that Crane was in bed with the mob, and there is one unhappy mobster, and that is their lead. And that is super fascinating to me with how we've now learned that Jonathan Crane is in bed with the mob, and there's a certain mobster who will be a lead as to finding out what maybe his operations are and truly the grand plan of his. As I said, I haven't seen future episodes beyond this, so this is complete news to me. And not only that, I thought this is all very much so a self-serving Crane and Scarecrow idea in terms of what he's doing to Gotham City through producing these drugs. But then again, maybe it isn't something like Batman Begins and where fear gas is going to go everywhere, but anti-fear gas. Maybe he genuinely is just constructing a load of drugs like this, and he's going to give it off to the mob so they distribute it, which obviously isn't great for Gotham. Who wants a drug going around like that? But maybe that's as simple as it is. Like, Crane's developing all of this, and he's giving it to that one unhappy mob person. We're gonna have to wait and see, though. We also had Lady Vic return back to Jonathan Crane, and he's wondering, is the bitch dead? But she's like, the bitch still got moves. And in this moment, she reveals that that flash during the middle of the fight was deliberately done because it was a photo. And honestly, I don't know why she got that photo. There's obviously something more to it, but even if you want a photo of her to expose her, what's a random close-up face photo gonna do? Like, oh, look, there's Commissioner Barbara Gordon in a beanie. So what is the plan? I genuinely don't know. I'd love to know your ideas down in the comments below. But speaking about Red Hood / Jason's redemption earlier, this only honestly makes it worse, especially with the added in guilt that they show. Like, through them showing guilt, it kind of makes it even worse, because we have Jason here, who you have to think who is wanting to dish these drugs out soon just so he's causing more problems in Gotham for Dick Grayson. He says to the thugs, you know, trust me, this is going to be the greatest high you've ever had, no fear, no limits. And so these guys take the anti-fear toxin and they go into the Gotham Noodle House, where, of course, we have good old Tim Drake. And this is really horrible, because they go in there and you literally hear multiple gunshots. Like, not just a couple, and that means multiple people have probably been shot dead, and one of them at least, I don't know about Tim Drake's mother, but the father has been wounded, and I'm guessing he might die, and that is going to obviously this is all going to springboard Tim Drake into the Bat family path. But this is the biggest tragic thing about this, other than Jay Lacargo's performance and the fact that he's literally going through something very traumatic, is Jason Todd outside looking like his heart is breaking. Then why are you doing this, Jason? Why are you doing this? He's standing there idly by, right in front, outside the Gotham Noodle House, as he's watching multiple people get gunned down. So the fact that he's enduring that, watching it, and it's breaking his own heart. You can see how upset he is, and that he has to take the Red Hood stuff. This is what I meant. It opens that wound of redemption. Jason clearly is still there, but it's kind of the situation now for a lot of people where it's like, well, so what? Just because he's remorseful and guilty, it doesn't fix anything. So that's the interesting debate, like, coming out of this. He's obviously still there, but does that matter to you after what he's done and what he's letting happen here? I don't know. Like, even for me now, after seeing this, it's like, damn, like, maybe I could have got past Hank with the manipulation of drugs, but here, you saw him without currently being topped up on a dose. Sure, he took another dose after, but you saw him go through with this when he was sober, assumingly, and he had to take a dose to, like, get rid of all the guilt and the feelings. So that shows me that Jason's still making these decisions when he's sober. Obviously, he might be a bit messed up with drawing and stuff. There's all that context that you can add in, and the fact that he's come back from the Lazarus pit and whatnot, but I don't know, like, this is very difficult. As Curran Waters said himself, Jason is very far gone. But one thing I'm very excited about after this is that I'm guessing that now we're in the back half and Tim Drake's kind of got his origin story here. This is going to mean that he's in a lot more episodes. And I'm very, very, very interested to see Jay Lacargo's Tim Drake be brought to fruition. As I said, temper your expectations. I don't think this is going to magically mean, oh, he's in a Robin suit. But, like, I'm interested in his journey now. Through this crime, like, are they going to start off like, now there's no Batman and Robin because Batman's disappeared. Through his eyes, is he going to be like, there needs to be a Batman and Robin? I need to find him because look what's just happened to my family without Batman in the city, without Robin in the city. So that leads him off to go on his own investigation to deduce the identities of Batman and Robin, and thus, similar to the source material, that's how he goes onto that path and comes into contact with Grayson and other characters. So after a very long review, again, that is my thoughts on the episode. I thought it was a decent Titans episode. There are so many good little nuggets in there. I loved Savannah Welsh's performance. I love the fact that we've got Tim Drake coming back into the fold now. I love that we've got Jonathan Crane out there in the open city of Gotham, his for the taking, and the little dynamic struggle of power between him and Red Hood. And there's so many other good aspects, obviously, with Corey, Blackfire, the Superboy scene. There's a lot of good stuff. It's just, at the same time, I just wasn't a big fan, I think, of the Lady Vic stuff. I feel like, unless I'm an idiot, and fair enough if that's the case, if I've just missed something out, it felt like that was a bit of a newbie oversight for the show to do. But other than that, like, it's another episode that cruises along the story, and it just has left me off to feeling like I want to know what's happening in the freaking next episode. So what did you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below as usual. Be sure to give a like on it if you have got this far. I mean, my god, if you've got this far, you have to leave a like. But subscribe as well if you aren't subscribed. As always, links are in the top pinned comment of the comment section. But thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you Titans family in the next video. Goodbye.